Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted to have with us Lita Currie. Lita, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Fritz. Excited to be here.
Yeah, allow me to briefly introduce your background so the audience knows who we're talking to. You are born and raised in South Africa, and you are a graphic facilitator, recording, and you've been doing this business for over 25 years experience, various industries. But I definitely want to spend some time with you, what it means to be a visual thinker, what is a graphic recorder. And I also want to point out you're the person behind the three stickmen, so I want to know a little bit more about what that is. And I just want to make certain because when I did my prep work, I came also across a Lita Currie who's baking cakes.
That is also me.
That's
Yes, we
also you. Okay,
different layers to our personalities. That's true.
good. Well, that's my sweet spot, no pun intended. But if we have time, definitely want to talk about that as well.
Fantastic.
Great. So you ended up now presenting yourself as a graphic recorder facilitator. Before we dive into how you got there, first a definition. What is that? What is a graphic recorder?
A graphic recorder is someone who uses a combination of words and pictures to help a group make sense of something. So, for
Okay.
example, you might have been to conferences or meetings where there's someone standing off to the one side of the room with a big piece of blank paper on it.
Yep.
And as people are presenting and discussing and having conversations, this person is capturing what they're hearing, what they're seeing in the room, and all the wisdom of everyone in the room kind of gets captured on this big piece of paper. And what is so cool about it is at the end of a conference or at the end of the meeting, you have an artifact, a piece of art, really, with everyone's inputs, everyone's ideas. And it's something that people can refer to again. It's something that the group can take away and go and share with other people. And it's something that the group can actually use post the meeting to follow up on certain of those insights and certain of the conversations.
Got it. So that's a graphic recorder.
That's it.
What's a graphic facilitator then? How's that different?
So it's slightly different. So a graphic facilitator is more of a facilitator using pictures to help people make sense.
Okay.
So for example, when I'm doing graphic recording, I'm not usually facilitating the meeting because there's a lot going on when you have to listen and draw and write at the same time. But when I'm facilitating a meeting, I tend to prepare some visuals beforehand. And during the meeting, I then use these visuals almost as templates to help the group think through things, to help the group reflect and to help them make decisions.
Okay. Now we got the definition straight. Good. Thank you for that. How does one become a graphic recorder or facilitator? What was your path to becoming that? Is there a training for that? How do you become one?
It's actually quite interesting. So in 2018, I went to Denmark to international conference for visual practitioners organized by the International Forum for Visual Practitioners, the IAVP, because I wanted to go and learn a little bit more. I was very new in this field. I'd only been doing it for about 2 or 3 years. And what I learned there is that people come into this field from a variety of positions. So some people are facilitators and trainers and educators, and they see being able to draw something in the moment as almost an extra skill that they have as a facilitator, right? So you've got people coming from the educational field, training and development. And then you have some people coming through from an art background. So either they have studied art or they studied fine art or they're graphic designers. And they are very able to draw. And now what they do is they learn the additional skills of listening. They learn the additional skills of understanding business, understanding groups, and they come into graphic recording and graphic facilitation from that point of view. So I have met people in this field from there. In fact, I met someone in New York last year who was a consultant working for Accenture. And he thought that the graphic skills would give him a bit of an edge when he needed to communicate to his clients, when he needed to facilitate conversations with people. So people come into this field from all over, really.
Okay. I immediately have to think about the saying "a picture says more than 1,000 words." So is that what it's is that like the summary of what it's all about?
It is. So if you think about it, If I say, think about a pink elephant, you immediately see a pink elephant because we are all visual processes. That's why if you've ever walked down a road and you see someone that you recognize the face, but you might not immediately recognize the name. I know that that's happened to me, right? So we're very good at processing visual information. And therefore, if you take a lot of information, rather than writing it down, and you translate that into a picture, people actually understand it better, they remember it better, and they can use it better. So that's really why a visual approach, I find, is so impactful.
Now, would this, I mean, you mentioned it's being used at conferences and meetings. Would you say it's going to be applicable to any situation, or are there instances where it's not a good tool to have?
That's an interesting question. So I have used a visual approach in different types of meetings. I use the visual approach with executives when they're doing strategy, when they're doing board meetings, and they love it. I've used the visual approach when I was teaching factory workers. Now, completely different content, completely different level in an organization, and they loved it. I use a visual approach when I'm coaching people one-on-one. I use a visual approach when we do team effectiveness workshops. I think a visual approach can actually help bring a layer of understanding and a layer of additional insights that you might not get without it. So think about it in this way. You're sitting in a meeting for a full day. There are PowerPoint presentations and slides and Excel spreadsheets. At the end of the day, what can you remember about what a particular person said? There's a lot of information, and people get so overwhelmed by this. Now, if you've created a picture, all you do is you go back to the picture and you say, oh, remember, we spoke about this, and Bob shared this, and Susan shared that. Everyone feels heard, and everyone can remember the most salient points for the full day.
Yeah. Okay. I got that. But then again, a picture is not a verbatim graphic presentation of the whole discussion. So you have to translate what was said into a picture. So that means you have to interpret what's important, not important. And I can imagine that in some cases, as an external to a meeting, you might not be able to pick up the nuance, what is really important and what's not. So how do you cope that in? How do you factor that in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple of answers to it. First of all, it's not about interpreting. It's about listening for what is being said and figuring out what is the crux of the meaning. Very often, there's usually a lot of conversation. Even when people make presentations, they talk a lot, but they say very little. So you have to listen out for what is it that they're really saying? What is their key point, that crux of the presentation, the crux of the conversation over the last 10 minutes? And that means you really have to understand business, you have to understand communication, and that's what you listen out for. Now, you take that and you capture that onto a graphic, but you also look at the group. So when someone says something, you look and see how is it landing in the group. If most people go, yeah, no, that's not important. If there's no energy behind what it's saying, then maybe it's not that important. So you keep it in the back of your head. But then someone else might say something additional to that, and it starts building up. And now you realize as the graphic recorder that this is actually quite important. This is something that I need to take cognizance of, and I'm going to capture that on the graphic. So it's very dynamic, it's very live, it happens in the moment.
That almost suggests to me that you have to have maybe a couple of years of experience in a working environment, in a business environment, before you're able to do that. I mean, that's going to be very difficult, fresh out of university, to apply those skills, because it's not just it's the listening part, it's understanding the culture, it's all the things you mentioned.
Yeah, it's true. And I must admit, I've had 30 years of experience in business, both in corporate and in my own business. And that really stands me in good stead, because here's the thing, a lot of businesses think that they're very different. They're not really. They struggle with the same things, right? They struggle with competition, they struggle with people, they struggle with process, they struggle with price. So understanding how business works really helps you to listen out for the same things, or for the pertinent points. I remember when I just started off in my career, I would sit in meetings and listen to everyone speak and thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about, So you listen and you learn and you build up that experience over time. That being said, it's a learnable skill. The ability to listen is something that you can learn and that you can hone with practice.
Okay, so you can learn to listen. I understand that part. But what do you say to the people who tell themselves, I don't have a clue how to draw something. I'm not good at that.
Yeah. And I was in that situation, right? So I could never draw, not as
Okay.
a child, not as an adult. I always thought that you got two types of people in the world. You got people born with this innate ability to be able to draw something, which is amazing. And then you would get people like me who couldn't draw. And it's interesting, a lot of people might have had an experience similar to what I had as a child. I was sitting in art class, I might have been about 9 or 10 years old. And the teacher said to us, why don't you draw an apple? So I, being very quick, I drew a circle and a little line at the top. That was an apple. And the teacher came past and she saw what I was doing. And I think she had the best intentions, right? But she sat down and she said, oh, sweetie, that's not what an apple looks like. An apple looks like this. And she started drawing this amazing apple right next to my little silly circle. And I'm sure she had the best intentions of trying to teach me how to draw. But what I heard was, obviously, my apple doesn't look like hers. That means I cannot draw. And that kind of,
Yeah.
I just stopped drawing.
Yeah.
But later on in life, I realized that drawing, like anything else, is something that you can learn. Drawing anything means that you can learn how to look at objects. You
Mhm.
can practice how to draw that apple over and over again. And the more you draw it, the easier it becomes and the quicker you can do it. So when I started out on this work, I had a lot of facilitation experience. I had a lot of coaching experience. I was good at listening and I understood the business. I had to learn how to draw. And you do that. You sit down, you say, well, let's draw an apple. Let's draw a cell phone. Let's draw a computer. Let's draw a pen. Let's draw a dragon, and you try these things, you practice them, and the more you practice
Yeah.
them, the easier they become.
Now, you've described so far that the drawings are meant to visualize in a graphic way a story of what's there. But when I look at art in general, the artist sometimes wants to reflect on society, wants to present a message, wants to create something which is never done before. So obviously a different purpose of that part of art. Is that something also you take with you when you do your work? Maybe with the visual facilitating part?
It's a good question, and the answer to that is no.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the following. As a graphic recorder, I am not there to put my own
Yeah.
inspiration onto the picture. I am there in service of the group. So even though I might not believe what they say is true, or I might not agree with what they say, it's not for me to say, well, now I'm going to interpret this in a different way. I am there as a filter to listen to what they're saying, to filter it through to figure out what is the most salient points and to capture that on the graphic. Because the graphic ultimately is not mine, it's theirs. The graphic becomes the group's because it's their thoughts, their wisdom, their conversation there. So graphic recording in that situation is not art because it is capturing meaning for the group. And that's what makes it different from an artist standing in front of
Yeah.
A blank canvas trying to create something new.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, moving along. Just question: are you familiar with Gareth Morgan's work, Images of Organization? One of the
No, what?
okay. It's okay. It's one of the top 10 management books all time, which basically also talks about images of organization. Um, we'll probably leave it for what it is, but it's a book I would highly recommend to anybody who is visualizing organization. It's a very worth reading book. But then I want to move on to something else. In my homework, I saw you also have a lot of posts, and one is I liked that title, How to Be the Worst Facilitator in the World. How
I
did
had
that
a lot of fun with it.
personal experience, or what did you see?
Yeah, absolutely. Experience as a participant, experience as a new facilitator. So I always think there's something to be learned about how not to do something, right?
Yeah,
So very often when I teach leadership and management, I ask people to think about the best manager that they've ever had. And then I ask them to think about the worst manager that they've ever had. And there's always a thinking process and a
yeah,
learning opportunity there. So what I've done with that particular series is I thought about some of the experiences that I've had as a participant when I was being facilitated, and sometimes where I didn't feel heard, or I felt the process was clunky, or I felt not safe enough to say what I was really thinking. And kind of turning that into almost a learning for people wanting to learn how to be better facilitators and say, watch out for that, because very often it's tricky to, as a facilitator, to put yourself in the position of your participants. And you must always remember a facilitator has an incredibly powerful position in a room. And understanding that power and being able to wield the power in a positive way for the benefit of the group is absolutely critical if you're going to be a good facilitator. So I thought a kind of a tongue-in-cheek couple of posts around, if you really want to screw this up, do these following things.
Okay. Now, in that context, what are some of the biggest failures or screw-ups you've experienced, and what did you learn from that?
I think one of the main lessons that I've learned as a facilitator is that you have to contract with the group about what your role is and what their role is. I was facilitating a group about a month or so ago, a team who was really struggling on working together. There was a lot of internal competition in the team. There was a lot of gossip. There was a lot of really negative behaviors in the group. And I spent close on an hour on the first day. We were together for 2 days. An hour on the first day, just contracting with them, just talking about how are we going to manage these 2 days? How will we deal with conflict? What is my role as the facilitator? What can they expect from me? What do they want from me? And what is it that they are bringing? So I have a lovely visual template for that. I have a template on a flip chart where there's a picture of a stick man with the hands out like this, as if they're wanting to receive something. And the question there is, what is it that you want to get out of the day? And that means from the team, it means from the facilitator, it means from the process. And then on the other side of the flip chart, there's a picture of a stick man with a gift in their hands. And the question there is, well, what are you bringing? Because as a participant in this workshop, you are as important as anyone else in the room. What is it that you are contributing to, that you are almost committing to bringing to the process to help us achieve what we need to achieve? And every time that something has not gone well with the group facilitating is because I didn't spend enough time in that contracting, in deciding what is it that they're going to do, what is it that I'm going to do, what are their expectations of me, and what is my expectation of them. So that was a critical lesson.
Yeah, basically avoid assumptions also. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, we do an exercise where we talk about, well, what are the ground rules for our behavior? How are we going to choose to behave in the next couple of days? And one of those, usually people come up with, we're going to listen and we're going to respect one another. We're going to engage. We're going to switch off our cell phones. And sometimes people come up with the thing around, well, when we hear these assumptions, we have to call them out. And what I do is I have a plush toy in the shape of an elephant. And the elephant is in the room on the floor, and I usually just leave it there. And usually about a couple of minutes into the session, people look at this elephant and they're like, why is there a plush elephant on the floor? And I use that and say, well, this is for the elephant in the room. So if there's anything that you think as a group that we need to talk about, that you feel that uncomfortable feeling, an elephant means everyone knows it's there, but everyone ignores it. If you feel that feeling that there's something that we need to talk about, reach forward and pick up the elephant and say, I'm calling the elephant. There's something here that we need to talk about. And that becomes a bit of a fun way and a bit of a more acceptable way for people to really step over that edge and talk about things that are difficult to talk about, but that's really, really important. And in fact, it worked so well. I was facilitating a group in Belgium a couple of years ago, and I brought the elephant with me from South Africa, and they wanted to buy the elephant. They're like, we'll pay you whatever you want. We just need to keep this elephant because it works so well. So that's one of my favorite tools.
Great. Again, no pun intended. Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, I think from a couple of places. So because the visual practice is such a visual thing, right? It's very easy to go online and go and look at different graphic recordings and different templates and different people drawing different things. So I love LinkedIn, I love Facebook, because people, especially visual thinkers, love posting their stuff online, and I can kind of steal a little bit with my eyes and say, oh, I can draw something in that way, or can draw an elephant in that way, or a puzzle piece in that way. So I get a lot of inspiration from that. I also get inspiration in the moment. because very often when I'm graphically recording, when there's a conversation in the room, a visual pops up in my head and I capture that. So last year I was capturing a strategy session for a local mine that we have in South Africa. And there was a big conversation about backstabbing happening in the group. So I drew a picture of two stickmen, because the company is called Stickman, right? I draw stickman. One stickman pushing a knife into the back of the other stickman. And it was a small little picture that I captured on the graphic. But that created such a lot of discussion. People came afterwards to me saying, thank you for capturing that, because that was something that we struggled to talk about. And now the picture is there.
Yeah, you just made me realize backstabbing. I mean, when you just say you say it so often in your normal language that, I mean, some people do, that when you draw it, it all of a sudden becomes in your face. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's a very, very powerful image. And I mean, I tried to make it a little bit more graphic. So there was blood
Yeah,
spurting from the back of the person. They had their hands up.
yeah.
So it was quite dramatic, but it was important to show that because backstabbing is such a violent act if you think about it. And that was
Yeah.
what the group wanted to bring out in that conversation. So a lot of that inspiration happens in the moment based on what I'm hearing from the group based on their discussion.
Yeah. Hey, Lita, thank you so far for sharing us how graphic facilitation can help organizations remember what they talked about. Before we go, I still want to come back to the fact that you also present yourself online as baking cakes. Now, is there a crossover or are those separate worlds?
I think they are separate worlds for all practical purposes, but there's obviously a crossover. So when I was 11 years old, I saw a book on cake decorating in our local bookstore.
Okay.
And I thought it was the most amazing thing that I ever saw. So I bought the book. I actually still have it. It's now, decades later. And I started getting into that because I loved creating something. I was very good with my hands. My mother was an excellent baker, so she taught me how to do that. And through the years, I've started baking birthday cakes and Christmas cakes, and I kind of kept it up. And in fact, about a year and a half ago, my youngest child, he's 16 now, he came to me saying he wants to make some money to go on a European tour.
Okay.
How can we make some money? And I said to him, well, why don't we start baking cupcakes? So we went into a business baking cupcakes, and he made enough money by baking and icing and selling cupcakes to pay for half of his tour to Europe.
Wow.
So it's something now that's going into a second generation. The interesting thing is something that I didn't know is that my great grandmother was also a baker and also a cake decorator, and I only found that out a couple of years after I started getting into it. So there's a lot of color involved, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of execution, which I suppose is the same type of skills that you need as a graphic recorder, as a graphic facilitator. You need to think about the colors, you need to think about the plan, you need to think about how is everything going to come together, how are you going to physically manifest it in the room, similarly to how would you physically manifest and decorate a cake. So I would imagine the skills are very, very, very similar.
Yeah, I'm hearing indeed creativity coming into play in both types of both works.
Creativity,
Yeah.
and there are different ways of being creative, right? So people think that creativity means you've got to be able to create something from nothing. Most creativity actually doesn't work like that. Most creativity takes inspiration from stuff that you've done before, or stuff that you're seeing in front of you, or new things that you try out or combine in different ways. And in that way, a lot of us have more creativity than we give ourselves credit for. So I'm not going to go and create a brand new drawing in the moment. I'm using things that I've learned how to do before, that I'm applying, that I might be combining in different ways. But that's how creativity shows up for me. It's using what I've learned before and sometimes just applying it in a different way. And that works extremely well.
Great. Well, Lita, so far, thank you for sharing your insights in using graphics to help tell a story, help to remember a story which was told. I like the crossover to cakes, just out of personal interest. I'm a foodie. Any takeaways also to young people out there starting their own journey? Anything you want to share with them?
Yeah. I think probably one of the most important things that I've learned in my career, and I've now been working for almost 35 years, is the fact that you can't know everything. When you're starting off your career, and a lot of people that I have contact with new in their careers tell me that they are scared of asking questions because they don't want to seem as if they don't know.
Yeah.
But you can't know, and you can't know everything. So don't let that stop you from asking questions. I made that mistake very early in my career. But the funny thing is, the more you learn in your career, the more you realize actually you are never going to know everything. So even later on in your career, it's still okay to ask questions. It's still okay to try something new, to almost be a novice. I mean, that's what I did in my career. I was a facilitator for 22 years, and then I became a graphic recorder. It was like a second career, completely new skill. And it was very scary trying to learn something new, because you get to a certain point in your career when you've been at it for a while that you feel very comfortable with what you can do, and you stop learning, you stop taking chances, you stop trying anything new. So again, it's that fear of not knowing or not being seen to know that kind of keeps us back. And I know that that's kept me back. And that's something that I've tried to embrace, to say, well, let me try it. Even if I fail, the second time I might get it right. So as you go through your career, keep your eyes open, keep your mind open, try new things, keep on asking questions. It's not about perfection. It's about the progress. They say practice makes perfect. I don't believe that. Practice makes progress. Focus on the progress. Keep on learning. Be better today than you were yesterday, and keep on learning, because that's going to give you a lot of satisfaction in your career. That would be my sage advice if I think back to what I've learned.
Lita, I want to thank you so much again for being on The Brand Called You, and hope we speak again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's appreciated. All the best.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.